First canto, 12th chapter. Right.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees, please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. I welcome all of you to His Holiness Candramauli Swami daily class. Thank you very much for joining. Welcome, Maharaj. Please accept my humble obeisances. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Haribo. Praise Prabhupada.
So today, hopefully, we are going to continue the Srimad Bhagavatam, verse from Canto 1, Birth of Emperor Parikshit, chapter 12, verse 29.
29.
I'm sharing the screen, Maharaj. Just. Over to you, Maharaj.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Iti Rajanupadishya Vipajataka Kovidaha Labdapachitaya Sarve Bhakti Jagmu Spakam Vinam. Translation. Those who are very expert in astrological knowledge and performance of birth ceremony instructed King Yudhisthira about the future history of his journey. Then, being sumptuously remunerated, they all returned to the respective homes. Report. The Vedas are the storehouse of knowledge, both material and spiritual. But such knowledge aims at perfection of self-realization. In other words, the Vedas are the guides for the civilized man in every respect. Since human life is the opportunity to get free from all material miseries, it is properly guided by the knowledge of the Vedas in the matters of both material needs and spiritual salvation. The specific intelligent class of men were devoted particularly to the knowledge of the Vedas were called Vipras, or the graduates of the Vedic knowledge. There are different branches of knowledge in the Vedas, of which astrology and pathology are two important branches necessary for the common man. So the intelligent men, generally known as the Brahmanas, took up all the different branches of Vedic knowledge to guide society. Even the Department of Military Education, Dhanurveda, was also taken up by such intelligent men, and the Vipras were also teachers of this section of knowledge, as were Dronacharya and Kripacharya. The word Vipra mentioned herein is significant. There is little difference between the Vipras and the Brahmanas. The Vipras are those who are expert in karma kanda, or fruitive activities, guiding the society towards fulfilling the material necessities of life, whereas the Brahmanas are expert in spiritual knowledge of transcendence. This department of knowledge is called Jnana Kanda, and above this there is Upasana Kanda. The culmination of Upasana Kanda is devotional service to Lord Vishnu, and wherein the Brahmins achieve perfection, they are called Vaishnavas. Vishnu worship is the highest of the modes of worship. Elevated Brahmanas or Vaishnavas engaged in transcendental loving service of the Lord, and thus Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the science of devotional service, is very dear to the Vaishnavas. As explained in the beginning of the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is a mature fruit of Vedic knowledge, and its superior subject matter above the three khandas, namely Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and Upasana. Amongst the Karmakanda experts, the Jataka expert Vipras were good astrologers who could tell the future of the born child simply by astral calculations of the time, which is called Lagna. Such expert Jataka Vipras were present during the birth of Maharaj Parikshit, and his grandfather, Maharaj Yudhisthira, awarded the Vipras sufficiently with gold, land, villages, grains, and other valuable necessities of life, which also include cows. There is need for such Vipras in the social structure, and it is the duty of the state to maintain them comfortably as designed in the Vedic procedure. Such expert Vipras, being sufficiently paid by the state, could give free service to the people in general, and thus this department of knowledge would be available for all. Chaksun militam yena tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasnaya Bhutale Shrimakti Bhakti Vedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswati Deve Gorvani Pachadine Nirvisesa Sunyavadi Paskyatya Satarine Panchakalpa Peru Vischa Kripa Sindhu Pe Vacha Vitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namaho Namaha. Jai Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Sivasari Gaur Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Rama. So the word Veda means knowledge. That's the actual definition. It also has a secondary meaning, which means Shruti. Sometimes the Vedas are called the Shruti. Shruti means to hear. And so that department of knowledge was given through the oral reception by the different Vipras, by the different Brahmanas. They would speak and people would listen and gain practical and material knowledge in order to organize society in such a way that people were fulfilling their material needs and living according to the laws of material nature. And then you have the Brahmanas, were a step up from the Vipras. They were educated in the actual essence of the Vedas, which is, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, Vedaistishaham aham Veda Vedo, Vedanta Krit Vedavit Eva Chaham. I am the compiler of the Vedas. I am the knower of the Vedas, and the Vedas are meant to know me. So ultimately, the purpose of Vedic knowledge is to know the Supreme Lord. And what is that knowledge? That means the process of devotional service. Without following the process of devotional service as given in Vedic philosophy, Vedic culture, one cannot know the Supreme Lord, nor can one achieve the goal of life, which is to develop love for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So these two classes of leaders within the society were educated both in the material requirements and in the spiritual essence. And they would give, as he says here, freely to society in general. They didn't charge people and ask for any type of donation or anything. People would willingly give offerings, sometimes grains, cows, land, villages, things like that. And that was done mostly by the state, but sometimes the individuals, in order to enumerate the or to show appreciation for the knowledge received, they would also give directly. That is just the culture. That is just the nature of human quality. People want to reciprocate when they receive things that are beneficial for their livelihood, both materially and spiritually. This is real culture. Nowadays, people have no direction in any of the two categories we mentioned. One is that fulfilling material needs, they just go ahead and do it according to the animal propensities. And therefore, there is no regulation in that. And that's one of the causes of sicknesses in this society. Most of the society we live in, especially the developed countries, people are very sick. Everybody's sick. They're always going to doctors. They're always getting some kind of medicines. They're always trying to find ways to rebuild their health up because they don't know how to live even materially. I mean, there's so many examples that people don't eat at regulated times. They eat whatever they want, not even knowing whether it's beneficial for their health or not. They sleep when they want, and they do things according to, there is some regulation. The only regulations that people have in life is if they get a work employment, and then they have to follow that schedule by being at work at a certain time and leaving at a certain time. Kids who go to school, the regulation, they learn regulation because they have to be at the classes at a certain time. And so that's the only regulated aspect of people's lives, which is helpful. But when people understand that without regulation and restriction, both, and that's what the Vedas have what is called vidis and nishedas. Vidis are things that we should do, and those vidis are divided into categories. There are vidis for the different classes of people, the Brahmins, the Kshatriyas, the Vaishyas, the Sudras, and there's slight differences between those different activities, and the restrictions are also there, both in those four categories. And even within the ashrams too, there are the brahmacharyas, the grihastas, vanapastras, and sannyasis. They also have their vidis, which are slightly different. It's called sadhu vritti. Sadhu vritti means to follow in the footsteps of the acharyas according to the practice of devotional service, which is slightly different for grihastas, those who live with family, and for those who are outside of that family encumbrances, they have to live according to more restricted rules and regulations. And both are given in the Shastras, and both are given by the saintly person. And so without a prescribed, duty or prescribed protocol in life, people cannot actually live happily and fulfill their needs. But here you see, the Brahmins didn't have to worry, the Vipras didn't have to worry about their livelihood because they were taken care of by the state. The state would sufficiently remunerate them, and they would get everything they needed in order to live. And many times they even received more than they needed. And then one of the principles of Brahminical culture is to give in charity. So they would give in charity. There are stories that their remunerations were way beyond their personal needs, and sometimes they didn't even take it. King Marut, he performed a grand sacrifices with all the Brahmanas. This is prior to the Battle of Kurukshetra. And he was so pleased with the Brahmanas that he rewarded them with innumerable amounts of gold. It was so much they couldn't carry it. So they just left it. And it actually became a mountain of gold. And when King Yudhisthira wanted to perform the Rajasuya sacrifice, after the Battle of Kurukshetra, the treasury was exhausted. They didn't have enough finances to do the sacrifice, which required great amounts. So he sent out his brothers to find the necessary gold, whatever, and finances. And Arjun came across that mountain, and along with his brothers, they brought it back. And that was used to finance the sacrifice. So that's just an example how when Lord Ramachandra was engaging the Brahmins in various types of sacrifices, he gave them so much. They couldn't, they said, my dear Lord, what will we do with all of this? So we'll just give it back to you because you know how to use it. So this is real culture, that people will live according to their needs and not according to their greed. People don't know what their needs are, and they mix up their needs with their wants, and they have no idea what is actually the need. The need is very simple, as Krishna explains, or actually the Vedas explain that one should live according to what one's needs to keep body and soul together. That means the body and mind has to be taken care of nicely so the soul doesn't suffer and cannot perform its duty of engaging in devotional service. So there has to be sufficient amount of food, clothing, shelter, education, opportunities for medical care. All of that is provided by the society through Brahminical culture. And here we're hearing one of the qualities of the Brahmanas, which is astrology. They were expert in astrology, the Vipras. They would go around and they would meet different people, and then they would do the birth chart of the newly born children, and then people would be satisfied and they would remunerate them like that. So they were expert in that science. That science is also called, it's part of the Vedas. It's called, what is it called? Jyotir Veda. It's called Jyotir Veda. And they had that expertise, and they could also predict what was happening, what will happen in the future. Even today, there are astrologers, they're called Brigal readers. There are very few of them left on the planet. They're buried somewhere in different corners of India, not too many of them left. They can tell you past, present, and future. They can tell you who you were in your last life, what you did already in this life, and what will happen in the future. I was just reading one book penned by my godbrother. He just released a book. And he went to such persons, and he was recommended, and the man took his birth chart and said, I will tell you everything. And then he came back. He said, he was a brahmachari at the time. He said, yeah, this year you will get married and you will have 3 children. Your first child will be born on October 12th, and he named the year. And then on another part of the reading, he said, and you will have a near-death experience at this particular time in your life, but you will survive it. So he writes in the book all of this, and he documents all of it. Everything came exactly the way it happened. He almost died. He had a shortage of breath. He saved himself by chanting the holy names and got to the hospital in time. Son was born on October 12th. And it said that that boy would be a great devotee of the Lord, and he's taken up Krishna consciousness and Susan. So all of these things, so these readers are there. You can find them in India today. It might not be so easy to find them, but if you know somebody who knows. One of our leading sannyasis went there and got his reading also. Told me, stop eating so much sugar. I don't think he listens well. But that's another story. But it's a great science. And here we're hearing about the birth of the future king of the world, King Parikshit, who at that time was just born. And all of his good qualities were being explained to King Yudhisthira and to the assembly of Yudhisthira's entourage at the time they were listening to all this. And Yudhisthira was being very happy to hear that the future of the world would be governed by a very qualified person. That was his anxiety after he departed from his post as administrator. He was concerned who will be the next heir to the throne. And that was answered by the appearance of King Parikshit. And then, of course, Bhagavatam describes many of his activities. So this is real culture. This is real uh, quality of life where people live according to scripture and according to those who know scripture. Nowadays, if saintly persons or religious institutions are not taken seriously, sometimes they're criticized for being burdens on society. They're not doing any practical work for the welfare of society. That's how they're categorized now. So there's no respect and there's no position for the churches or for the spiritual people in society because it's pretty much a society run by low-class men who have no culture and understanding. They're on the level of barbarians, the barbarian society, because they have no direction in life. Just because people have big houses, nice cars, and computers, big families, doesn't make them civilized. Civilization is based on culture and not on money or how much you have. Based on character, it's based on culture, it's based on aesthetic and moral values for the material, and it's based on the developing the goal of life from Prema Pumartha Mahan. That is actually real culture. So this Krishna conscious movement is established to bring back real human culture to the world. And so Srila Prabhupada made that his life's work to bring that to the world. He didn't come just to start a religious movement or a spiritual movement, he totally said, to take and turn the whole society around towards the Vedic scheme in all aspects of life. Education, medicine, military, everything. Any department of knowledge which is intrinsic in a developed society. Srila Prabhupada emphasized that in many of his purports in the Srimad Bhagavatam. And here you're hearing about astrology. This is a good example. So this is the Krishna consciousness movement. And of course, it has been predicted by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu that Vedic culture will become more and more prominent as time goes on. And this is what is happening in the world today. The devotees are increasing. Spiritual life is becoming more profuse among common people. They're taking up this chanting. They're taking up some of the values, such as stop eating things that are harmful and sinful. And they're also becoming more educated in what is the goal of life. But at the same time, the demons or those who are against God and religious principles, they are also increasing. So you're seeing this dichotomy now in the world today, where the demons are becoming more influential in controlling people's lives and exploiting. At the same time, the Krishna conscious movement is expanding simultaneously. That means people who are neutral are either being exploited more or they're moving towards God consciousness. That means the middle road is no longer becoming the main category of the population. So this you do a little, this you can see if you do a little study of today's economic, political, and social culture, you'll see that these two factors are increasing quite exponentially. Just like yesterday, we are here in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. We had a wonderful Rath Yatra. It was probably the most successful Rath Yatra that was attempted by the devotees here in this area. Very nice, many people came to the Rath Yatra. A nice cultural program. And we're seeing people buying our books. It's like we sold hundreds of dollars worth of books We got people to chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. We have a japa tent where people could go and learn how to chant japa. We have a place where people could talk to the devotees, learn more about it, and purchase our books. So yeah, people are becoming aware that Krishna consciousness is what they're looking for in life, because there's no real, we say, value to what is being offered in today's world today. Simply work hard, get some money, spend it on sense gratification, get sick, have life insurance, death insurance, in between life and death insurance, car insurance, kid insurance, house insurance, fire insurance, this insurance. So the only insurance comes when you chant the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, then you get the full benefit of all of the insurances. So this society is somewhat dysfunctional, and it's becoming quite obvious as it becomes more and more soul killing and more socially dysfunctional on all levels. But therefore, one should take up this Krishna consciousness very seriously. Chant your rounds every day with attention, with devotion. Don't minimize the importance of chanting the Hare Krishna mantra. Make it the first thing of your day. Read Srila Prabhupada's books. Get a library of Prabhupada's books. Prabhupada wanted all of his books in every home throughout the world. As devotees, we should keep a nice library of books and read the books. Prabhupada spent so much time, energy, and development in getting these books translated, printed, and distributed. So we have a wealth of knowledge there. Don't just get the books and dust them every once in a while and make it look like it's something in your house. You have to read them. Go to the temple if you live nearby a temple and hear the classes. And don't waste time in material life. It's simply, there's no benefit in that. They say, if you choose the material over the spiritual, then you lose both. But if you choose Krishna over everything else, then whatever you need materially will automatically be provided by the arrangement of the Supreme Lord. So, yeah. So we hear this is what is one element or one factor of a progressive society, and people didn't have to worry about their material needs. Things were provided for them automatically by the organized king who took care of the citizens like he took care of his own children. These were real rulers, not today that they get into office and 45 days later they get kicked out of office. That recently happened in London. No, it was in the UK. The minister of the UK. She came in power, and 45 days later, they kicked her out. That was just about a year ago. So, yeah, this is the way they don't know who to vote for. And the people that get in there, they always have their own personal programs for taking advantage. They favor some society because they get some kickback from that. Or if they don't favor a certain society, then they get kicked out. So we live in a very difficult and very dysfunctional society. Therefore, Srila Prabhupada gave us the knowledge as a foundation for building the Vedic culture within the world. And one of the things he emphasized was live simply, live the way Krishna lived, and don't become overly dependent on this Western soul-killing society. Okay, so there's a lot to be said in these categories. So we can stop here. open it up for questions.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank
Yeah.
you for wonderful class.
We have Vrindavan Nath. I have a small little group here on the local level, so we'll take questions back and forth.
Sure, Maharaj. Sure.
Well, see, anybody there have a question?
Yeah,
Okay.
so maybe first, Maharaj, you can see questions from your side in your room, and
All
also
right.
and in the parallel, I can request devotee, please, if you can switch on your video, who are on the Zoom, please. It gives a nice environment.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'll repeat the question when it comes from my side.
Is devotees are Vipras, more of Vipras. They are not there at fully Vaishnava level.
Mm-hmm.
More of doing more of army stuff.
So there's been an observation based on the explanation of the verse and purport, wherein within our society we haven't coming up to the level of Vaishnavas. We're still mixed with Karma Kanda, Jnana Kanda, and of course Upasana Kanda is there. So that was an observation. That is true, but not completely. There, more or less, it's there. Some persons who are in leadership position may not be up to the standard where they have the qualities to lead people or actually provide what is needed for those who follow them in order for them to make progress in devotional service. So it's a little bit mixed, we might say, in our society, based on demigods are open. Based on that, we still deal a little bit with material. But a brahmana is not supposed to work for anyone. If a brahmana has a job, he's fallen. But today's society is that people go to work for the materialistic society, and but that was there when Prabhupada started the movement. But he gradually gave us a formula to extract ourselves from that dependency and develop our own Vedic society within the culture of Western culture, gradually. So yeah, I know one spiritual master. He won't give Brahminical. He won't give second initiation, Brahminical initiation to anyone who works. He says Brahmins don't work. And that is actually the real Brahmin. They don't work, they actually give knowledge. But who's going to support the Brahmins nowadays? We haven't set up the support system for where the Brahmins can actually get what they need and perform their duties. So that's missing. Yeah, I think we would have more devotees who extract themselves from the Western dependency if there was a support system that was there. Of course, many times people give donations, but the way we live today, sometimes they have families and not much for them to, make a livelihood of them. So as a society, we're in a transition stage from the ideal and where we are now in a less than an ideal situation. Yeah. Okay, Sri Devi.
Thank you, Guru Maharaj. My question is about the Vipra and the Brahmanas. Actually, I have two questions, but let me just ask one now. Sudama was called Sudama Vipra. but he was a pure Brahmana. So why was he called Sudama Vipra?
Well, it's just sometimes the term is interchangeable. But Prabhupada's making a clarity of the actual terminology. And sometimes Brahmanas are called Vipras, which means twice born. But here is the clarification between the different titles.
So it is said over here that the Vipras are teaching people karma kanda and guiding them towards material, fulfilling the material needs.
Karma
So-
and Jnana Kanda.
And jnana also, jnana kanda.
Mhm.
So what is jnana kanda? That's mental speculation. Isn't that, is my understanding correct?
No, that's liberation. Jnana Kanda is just like there's the four Purusharthas. Dharma, Artha, Kama, Moksha. So Moksha is Jnana Kanda. The other three are Karma Kanda. But moksha is not our goal. Our goal is Prema Pumartha Mahan, which is called the fifth Purushartha, or the Purushartha Siromani. The goal of all activities of life is to develop love of Krishna. Bhagavatam explains that your occupational duties, though do not lead you to the actual goal of life, Shrama Eva Hi Kevalam, very useless waste of time.
So Prema Pumartha Mahan is considered Shiromani Kanda.
No, it's called Purushartha Siromani.
Oh, Purushartha Shiromani. Okay. Thank you, Maharaj.
Okay. Hare Krishna. Scarlett.
Hare Krishna, thank you for the class today. Actually, my question it's somewhat mixed for today and what we have two classes before, and it was I asked the question and I wondered and I have stuck in it that when one is not initiated, none of the devotional service that this person does not worth anything, and that
Whoa! Where'd you hear that?
Yes, but that's what
That's not true. Don't push that point. It's not true.
It's
It's
stated
not
in
true. It's not. Wait. Listen, just listen for a while. First of all, before you go on, we have to make sure that that statement is destroyed quickly because it is completely wrong. 100%. Because there is a process. It's called a Dausrata Sadhu Sangha Bhajana Kriya. Bhajana Kriya is the third step. Even when you come in association with devotees and you're practicing the process, you're performing devotional service. But it's not mature. It's just preliminary. But still, there is advancement. If it wasn't any advancement, how could you go to the third stage? You can't get to the third stage unless you go through the first two stages, which is, these are preliminary before you actually get initiated. So you're actually making progress as soon as you begin. Even if you're a non-devotee and you do some service for a devotee, that's called agyata sukriti. That is unknowingly performing devotional service. And there's some benefit for that, which will mature later into another opportunity. So forget that idea. Devotional service, there is an element of growth in every level of devotional service, even if it's performed unconsciously or unknowingly. Yeah, because that's a very dangerous statement. We don't want
It's
that.
not I promise you, I read it in Madhya Lila, I promise. It's not my statement. It states in Madhya Lila,
Where?
15108. 15,108.
Bring that up. Let's see. Let's see what the context is. The context is the important part of the statement and not just the statement. $15,108. One does not have to undergo initiation or execute the activities required before the initiation. One has to simply vibrate the holy names of the Lord. Thus, even a man in the lowest can be delivered. That seems to confirm what I'm saying. Diksha is the process by which awakens transcendental knowledge and vanquishes all reactions caused by sinful activity. So where is the statement that you're at?
If you go lower, if you go much
Unless one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, is that what it says?
Yeah, that's correct. Unless one is initiated by one of all his activities are used.
Go up, Vrindavan Nath Prabhu. It's up, not down. Unless one is initiated, it begins like that.
You have to understand that context. Unless one is, well, where does it say? Okay, useless. Let's see the word useless.
Unless one is initiated by a bona fide spiritual master, all his devotional activities are useless.
Where
A
is
person
it?
who is not properly initiated can descend again into the animal species. That's what she was asking me. And I said, it's best to ask Guru Maharaj because the context is important.
Okay, so what that means is that you have to, at one point, you have to come to the stage of initiation. So Prabhupada would also say, unless you're that before you get initiation, you're practicing. But if you don't come to the point of initiation, then after some time, you will go back. You'll go backwards. So that is the requirement. The third stage has to. In other words, you have to. Once you begin, you have to continue. If you stop, then at one point, then everything becomes useless. But whatever you've done brings you to the point of coming to the stage of the initiation.
thank you.
You understand. So just because you're thinking because you're not initiated, you're not, everything you're doing is useless. No, it's not useless. It's bringing you to the stage of qualifying yourself to become initiated. If you stop and you give up the process, then whatever you've done is pretty much useless. Because you don't get to the stage of bhajana kriya, which is initiation. Therefore, you have to take initiation if you want to reach to the goal of devotional service, which is Prema Kumarta Mahan. So that statement requires explanation. Prabhupada will make statements like that, but they have to be required. You have to be compared in relationship to other statements that are similar. Chaitanya Mahaprabhu says, anyone who chants the holy name of Krishna just once is a Vaishnava. That's Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So yeah, you have to understand the context. So that verse is really telling you, you can't just stop at a certain point and then expect to get the benefit. You have to continue. If you don't continue, then you go backwards.
Thank you, Mataji. And I think this is so important to, in one way, that how and why reading or like going through these scriptures is very important in sadhu sangha, because on our own we can have some our own context, our own meaning, but when we are in proper sadhu sangha, then I think we get the real meaning. Thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah.
Namta Mataji.
Namrata.
Hare Krishna, humble obeisances, all glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna.
My question is, there was a future prediction for Kamsa and there was a future prediction for Parikshit Maharaj as well. So, although hearing about the death, one of the person was in acceptance and the other person was in anxiety for the entire life. So, is it advisable for a people of Kali Yuga like us with less control over their senses and less acceptance level to refer to the Jyotish Shastra?
No. Prabhupada sometimes would just engage in astrology just to give him some service for them. But Prabhupada said if you clap your hands in kirtan, then you change your lines on your hands and then your future changes also. So astrology can be used for, like when is the best time to get married? Because there's certain titis within the year that are opportune for marriage. Or when is the best time to plan for a family? In other words, the beginning, the Garbhadan Samskara. For grihastas, certain time periods in their life astrology may be useful for them to plan accordingly. But generally for sannyasis, brahmacharis, and those of the same lifestyle, we don't really get involved with astrology. Because we simply depend on Krishna. That is our astrology, Krishna. When you work fully under the care of the Supreme Lord, he takes care of you 100%. Even if we're destined to at a certain time, if you're under his shelter, he can change all that around. And he does. But one must live according to the principles of human culture and not outside that. As long at the same time engage in devotion and service. You can't live a reckless material life and expect that Krishna will protect you. Or a very ignorant form of material life. You have to follow human culture, at least to the best of your ability. And if you're trying, then Krishna will, and you're trying to take shelter of Krishna at the same time, you're in the best position to make progress, both materially and spiritually. Just depend on Krishna.
Yes, Maharaj, thank you. Actually, I do that, but sometimes, over the situations when they turn troublesome, the external factors when they affect. So family members, they just come and bother you. Okay, we'll refer Jyotish Shastra. We'll do something like this. But then, I also feel that if you're depending on Krishna consciousness, then you should have that acceptance. So I was just asking you this question for that.
Yeah. And even if you went to an astrologer, you don't know how bona fide they are nowadays.
Yeah, exactly.
Hard to find these Brigo readers, but they're available.
Thank you, Maharaj.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Everyone loves the cover of the book.
Thank you, Maharaj.
The one that designed that cover. Amazing artist. Yeah. He could be,
That
he could probably be,
your mercy, Guru Maharaj, your mercy and Gauranga's mercy.
if you weren't a devotee, you would probably be, you know, a billionaire just by your artistic career. You would be traveling around the world and giving lessons in art to people who are expert artists. He's really good. I mean, it's, but I think because since you became a devotee, your artistic ability has developed even more. And that's good.
I'll be more happy in that, Guru Maharaj. Devoting my art to Krishna, that will give me more happiness, I guess.
Prabhupada used to say about Jadharani, she was one of the first artists. He said, I taught her how to paint. He said, and I taught her how to paint Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. It's a lesson in art 101. That's not a euphemism, that's actually the foundation for everything we do in Krishna consciousness.
But Guru Maharaj, I just feel it's your potential, it's your work. I'm just the instrument for, doing just a little small, tiny, mini cover up. That's it, nothing else. So if I have read the book once, and the research is like you and Prabhupada, I could just see that. So I'm just a teeny miny person, nothing more than that.
We're about to release the second book you worked on too, the one on what was that called? Travel diary.
Travel diary.
You did some artwork in there too, or?
Mostly it was composition. Mostly it was composition, collecting things and compositing.
But did you do any actual? Was more like just putting together.
Yes, artwork I am planning for the nectar of daily drops. So in that I'm planning for the artwork in that.
Good. Thank you. Devotees are happy.
Please keep showering your mercy and just help me more and more to do the devotional service. Thank you, Guru Maharaj. Hare Krishna.
So, Hare Krishna Maharaj. Now we have only 1 minute left, and I see 2 questions on the chat. Maharaj, should we ask?
Yeah.
Okay. So first question is from Bonnie Alexander Prabhu. He is asking, is it true that if an animal hears the Hare Krishna Mahamantra, then they can take a human birth? This is something we always hear, and I like to believe, but I am wondering, is it in the scripture?
Well, that's really hard to give a direct answer, but it says that we see how many incidents within our history of our society, animals come around and they just sit there and listen to our kirtan, even in classes. There was one monkey in Vrindavan when Prabhupada would give outdoor classes in Krishna Balaram temple, which is kind of an open air temple. This monkey would come every Thursday, only on Thursday, and he would sit and listen. And then he would go and come back next Thursday. And he would sit there and just listen to the class. There's another story in Orissa where one devotee was doing Bhagavad Saptaha. And there was a bull And when he began the program, the bull came into the assembly of devotees and sat right in the middle where all the devotees were. And then at the end of the day, the bull would get up and leave and come back the next day for the class. And then after the 7 days, nobody saw that bull again until next year when they had the same Bhagavad Sapta, he would reappear again. So, well, who's that bull? Who are the monkeys? So, because we also have Shivananda Singh, he took care of a dog, and Lord Chaitanya also delivered 2 dogs, one that Shivananda Singh brought, and the second one, when he was a young boy, he liberated a puppy dog. So we can say by example that animals do benefit when they hear the holy name. There's no question about that. Whether they take a human birth or maybe even they may even get a demigod's birth, who knows? Or they may even go back home, back to Godhead if they dedicate their whole life to humans. We have many temples that have animals around. Some, I remember in New Vrindavan, there was one cat. He would always sit outside and listen during the morning program. Just sit there and listen to the kirtan. And yeah, so animals are perceptive. They hear. And if they're hearing pure sound, they may not understand it, but they're attracted to it because the soul is there. So we could say that obviously they're greatly benefited. And animals can't do anything wrong. We sit and we hear and chant, and then we get up and we do some crazy things. But animals don't do anything wrong. They live according to their animal-like nature. So they can't commit sinful activities. It's not possible for animals to connect to perform pious activities or sinful activities. They live below these 2 principles, but they are governed by nature according to the particular body that they have. And they follow that. So if they hear the holy name, obviously they're going to get benefit. No question.
Okay.
Thank you, Bonnie.
He's saying thank you. Yeah. So Maharaj, there is one question from Janva Mataji over the chat. And she's asking, Hare Krishna Guru Maharaj, if I can ask, what is your preferred Shrimad Bhagavatam story and why?
You want to ask a personal question? Perform my favorite Srimad Bhagavatam story? I like all of them. Of course, I like to hear Krishna's pastimes in the 10th canto. And Prahlad Maharaj is very attractive. But generally, they're all transcendental and they're all very attractive. Yeah. You have a particular story you like?
I like Krishna eating his food every time it is time.
So we have our local devotees here, and Vanamali Panditji, Vanamali Gopal. he said his favorite is when Krishna sits around and eats with his friends and they enjoy each other's lunch. So his spiritual master gave him a name as a cowherd boy. So so it's obvious what stories he likes. Nitya Gopal, what's your? So we have another Gopal here. We got two Gopals. And this is Nitya Gopal, whose home I'm staying in. He likes when Krishna smashes the butter and steals it. I think he did that when he was a kid too. He used to steal butter from his mother's refrigerator.
God, you don't know, like he breaks it and the yogurt is all over the places. He goes to that yogurt and his steps are all over the places. They know when Yashoda knows where he is at.
And so yeah, he's expanding on that story and how Krishna smashes thing and then slides through the yogurt and butter. And then he makes footprints all around and really. So, he likes pastimes of naughty children because I think he was a naughty kid. Okay.
So Maharaj, we have already 8 minutes over the time. I see 2 hands raised from Sridevi Mataji and Scarlett Mataji now. Should we continue or?
If they're really burning philosophical questions, we can take them, but if they're just incidental things that I said, let's wait till tomorrow.
So Mataji, over, you would like to raise that burning
Yeah,
question?
it is a burning philosophical question for me. So I'll go ahead and ask with your permission, if you don't mind. Maharaj, I'm still trying to wrap my brain around this. The Vipras were expert in karma kanda activities, guiding society towards fulfilling material necessities of life. So what were they doing to fulfill society's material necessities? Can you just explain what these Vipras were doing in terms of karma kanda and jnana kanda?
Yeah. It's right there in the purport. They were astrologers. That's one of the things. They could also give medical advice. They could give practical education. Just like Sanatana Goswami, he would go into the villages and tell people how to manage their agricultural crop also. Teaching people or explaining, the science of agriculture. Yeah. But nothing's left out in Vedic culture. You have to understand that. So every necessity, both material and spiritual, is covered in the Vedas. And there was a class of people to organize that in society. Okay. So
Thank you, Maharaj.
we can stop here and we'll just hold your questions till tomorrow. We'll be back tomorrow at a different house in a different location.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you very much for this amazing class. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Anant Koti Vaishnav Vrind ki jai.
Thank you, Gopal ki jai, Gaur Premanandi, Hari 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 Gaur.
Thank you very much for today.
Hare